stream of the Bondex app. Follow the Green Rabbit. We are the leading Web3 professional network in the world, and we're very lucky to have Figment Milmalaisen today from the largest infrastructure and staking provider in the whole Web3 space. We're very lucky to have them. Essentially, what Figment does, and I'll let Bill kind of cover, but to give a super brief overview, they provide institutional grade solutions for a lot of the biggest and leading kind of financial institutions and networks out there, providing institutional grade, from validator services to hosting, staking capabilities, developer tools, and proof of stake blockchains. And but Bill, I'll let you actually give a little bit better background than me on what is Figment to you. What does Figment, kind of give us the intro.
Sure. I think you did a pretty good job, Ignacio. So we're an infrastructure provider. We provide the picks and the shovels to help make proof of stake blockchains work. A metaphor I've used before is back before the dawn of the Web 2 movement. You had an open source platform called Linux and a company called Red Hat. Right? Red Hat did not create Linux, but what they did was help empower it and grow it. Right? They provided infrastructure services and tools that allowed people to utilize Linux in a better form. So similarly, what Red Hat did for Linux and open source operating systems, Figment is attempting to do for blockchains and proof of stake blockchains. We provide tools, services, and expertise that help institutional clients, be they the foundations, the protocol teams, large-scale financial institutions, or the gateways to crypto. We provide them with a secure and professional service so that the proof-of-stake blockchains can work better.
If I was to give a oversimplification, would it be fair to say that you provide the piping or the roads, for the entire Web3 highway, let's say?
I think that might be too much of an oversimplification because we're not the only ones that are providing the roads, but you're in the right direction, right? I think that the protocols are providing the roads, right? The protocol teams themselves, and so Ethereum, Solana, Cardano, they're providing the roads. We're the highway team that is helping to make sure that the roads run extremely effectively.
Okay, understood. That's better. And what is your role at Figment? Tell us a bit about your own professional journey into Web3 and Figment.
Sure. I'm head of people at Figment, and so my main role is to make sure that we hire, retain, and create an environment where people can thrive. And the journey to Figment was, I joined in 2021 when we were a much smaller company, and probably in the realm of 20, 30 people. And over the course of the past 2 years, like a lot of other Web3 companies, we saw a huge growth spike, and we've been managing that. And so, my entree to Figment was knowing the team, knowing the founders, and joining them to help with the growth.
Were you in an HR or talent traditional role or traditional industry before, and then this was your segue into Web3? You have previous Web3 experience?
No, I was not specifically in HR. I came out of the more operations side of the house. And I had helped companies improve their operations. So I was more in consulting world, and then also was part of a number of startups in the past. And so I don't have the traditional HR background that you would have, but I have the traditional operations background that people have. I got into Web3 and blockchain stuff probably fairly early days, back in I first came across it in 2013 when I started to hear about Bitcoin, started to dabble in it a little bit just personally. And then I had a number of projects where we were doing some research and innovation consulting for teams, where we were exploring how they might use blockchain technology internally for some of their strategic initiatives.
Got it. I always love to hear the origin stories of Web3 and how people, got into their current companies. As you know, as Bondex, our objective is to provide a bridge for people to come into the Web3 space and increase the total supply of talent, but also become the de facto hub for the existing Web3 professionals. Because currently, there's only a few noisy platforms like Twitter, and everyone's kind of like trying to get attention and fragmented kind of source of information.
Yeah. I
And
mean, I got sucked in like a lot of other people, right? Enamored with the technology and the possibility of a better, different way of doing things like, the Twitters of the world, and other platforms that, are collective in how they're utilized, but centralized in how they're like owned and governed. And so I took the pill a while back on blockchain technology too.
absolutely, I think it tends to attract people with a sense of pioneering or adventure, for
Yeah, a
sure.
sense of their, look what we might be able to do something better and different.
Which is what we're working for, and that's why we want to evangelize everyone trying to kind of do it together as a community, which is unique also to this industry.
Mhm.
And I'd love to talk a little bit more about the talent market and how that's working or changing at Figment, or in the market in the last year. If you can tell us a bit more about the trends that you've seen.
Well, I would start with saying there's been a very, I think, strong change over time in the talent market, specifically in the Web3 space. And so in starting in 2021, it got, I think, extremely hot. A lot of people started coming into the space from the finance world, from some of the Googles, Amazons, Facebooks of the world. They started to, engineers started getting excited about problems that they were solving. And so we had a huge run up in 21 and 2022 in terms of talent. It was very hard to get, and prices for people started to get astronomical. And that was happening throughout the tech space, and then in particular in Web3. We've started to see that cool a little bit as the market has kind of gone into a little bit more of uncertainty. And I think that's happened again across the technology space, but then also specific to Web3. So that's the first trend.
Which I think it's simple terms, supply and demand, right? If you go to an industry and you have a certain skill set in which there's a kind of there's an arbitrage there if there's not that many people with that knowledge base or wanting to get into that space, and therefore you end up getting paid better. And I still think it's a great time to get into it, even if there's a bit more uncertainty, because you can pick the winners or the best projects and you position yourself for the next cycle and honing in those skills now with a lot less noise in the market. So I think it's a fantastic time to get into it, the space.
Yeah, I agree, and I still think for people who it's still hard to find people who really understand blockchain development, right? And so folks who have put in the time and really developed their capabilities and capacities in understanding blockchain development, security, data indexing, even on the marketing and biz dev side, if you understand how these things work, you can set yourself apart from the rest of the pack.
Completely agree. And one thing I want to ask you about is, we always love to dissect how companies work. And what I mean is how is the team structured? Is it distributed? Is it global? How does Figment go about its work? And then what are some of the best practices that it does to maintain a great culture and maintain the way it works?
Yeah. Yeah, it's always a fascinating question because I think there's many different ways you can get a company to work really well, or an organization. We have a decentralized, distributed team, and so we are in. Last time I checked, we have team members in 20 different countries.
Wow.
Yeah, we took a strategy of hiring the talent that we thought was the best fit, no matter where they were, to a certain extent. That strategy, I think, has served us mostly well because we have people who are really passionate about what they do and really passionate about being part of a company that enables them where they are, right? So we're a Canadian company. We have a nexus in Canada, in Toronto, but we are distributed. So the pros and cons of that, right? Um, the pro of that is that we can utilize people in different time zones to support coverage across, follow the sun coverage. And we have a lot of diverse mentalities, right? And so we have people coming from many different cultures, many different uh, development paths. So they didn't all go to the same school, study the same things, right? And so we find that to be very valuable. Some of the challenges are, distributed team. It's a lot harder to coordinate everybody. And so we have to have pretty good practices of coordination. And it gets a little bit harder when you're doing cross-functional teams. So some of the things that we've seen work best are setting teams up so that they have a clear understanding of charter, role, and outcomes, and then developing communication protocols. Like, how are we going to communicate effectively across space, time, and channel? In the world that we live in any one day, teams are in Slack, Jira, Asana, Google Hang, WhatsApp, Telegram, Signal, right? There's all of these different information channels. And so it's become extremely important that we establish communication protocols for, hey, where are we going to use the channels in order to share information, make decisions, move forward.
Because you just don't want things falling through the cracks, and you need to formalize things. I completely get it. And my next question would be, what are some of the best practices you guys do to have a great culture with a distributed and remote team? Because that's also, every company has its own flavor, and I always enjoy hearing about it.
Yeah, and it becomes really, I think, challenging when you have people in all parts of the world, because it's hard to get people together, right? And so, as much as we live in this digital dispersed world, I think one of the most important things that we've seen is getting people together in real life. Um, it doesn't mean that you have to. We're not moving to a world at Figment where we're going to establish offices and require people to go back to work. But what we are doing is trying to get teams together in real life for a period of time so that they can do, let's say, a week of working together, and then diverge back to their locations. So one of the things that we've tried over the past 2 years is we got everybody together, like the whole company, for a big company offsite. That was great for overall culture and getting people to meet people that they don't normally work with. One of the things we're doing this year is doing more small team get-togethers, right? And do it more frequently. So maybe 2 or 3 times a year, your work team will get together and talk about actual work challenges. And that's not your functional team necessarily. It's not like all the product people. It's the product, engineering, design, data people all getting together to work on like the problems that they're all sharing.
Got it. And now, if we can move the conversation to what Bondex is trying to disrupt, which is the talent acquisition and fulfillment functions. So I'd love to hear about how do you work at Figment? What platforms do you use for talent acquisition to find that this global distributed team um,
Mhm.
that makes up the company?
Yeah. So somewhat, I think standard. We have Greenhouse as our ATS. We've used Gem as a platform to help with reporting. Um, we have an internal HRIS that kind of helps handle some of the onboarding, and then we have a recruiting team that helps all of our hiring teams manage the interview process. I would say that we heavily rely on referrals. And so we've seen that a lot of the best people have come from not necessarily like the first degree of separation, but from people thinking about and utilizing their network to say, um, here's the role that we're looking for, the type of person that we're looking for. Who do we know in our network that can recommend somebody? And so using that referral network has been very, very powerful for us.
We are, very much aligned. Is what we're trying to base Bondex on. Is we believe that your network and your team's network is the golden grail of how to actually build a company and a team,
Hmm.
because there's this trust function that happens. People make it to the top of the funnel faster, is cheaper, and also you get better fit candidates because it's from people that are already part of the culture and part of the organization. So
Yeah.
referrals are just the best building block that you can for hiring. But currently, traditional talent platforms, they're kind of this middleman. There's a misalignment of incentives. So that's why
Hmm.
we're trying to capture as a referral based professional network. And that's what we'll be launching the market in the summer. And I think I'm quite excited. And something that also people miss out on is monetizing their network, right? And this is
Hmm.
something that every big organization, successful organization on the planet has it. They have very good referral programs and incentives mechanisms, but they're all internal. So I think they're missing. There's room for kind of an external system that captures
Yeah.
this referral system. So I love that you said that's kind of like your big go-to.
There's a
And
there's an interesting challenge I kind of want to point out there with the referrals is that we talk about proof of stake, right? A lot of the blockchain world is about proving things, right? How do we prove the truth or the identity and verify the things? Let's apply that to hiring, right? One of the things that we're trying to prove through whatever networks that we're using are proof of competency, proof of fit, right? And then proof of there's kind of like this other thing of ability to thrive. So competency is like, does the person have the capabilities that we need for this particular role? Fit is, will this person fit in with our culture, our people, the team attitude, etc. And then this last bucket is like, can they handle working in a remote world at an early stage company where you have to deal with a lot of uncertainty? Um,
so I would love to hear about how do you go about assessing those things, if you can share.
so the first one is probably the easiest, the capabilities one, right? You can put people in scenarios and say, tell me about a time when, and show me your body of work, right? Show me that you have the capabilities for this role. It gets better when we can have a referral who said, I worked with this person, or I've watched them do these things, right? The second one, proof of fit, that's a little bit more of the team has to feel that, right? That's the feeling one. Will this person fit in our culture? And then the last one I think we found, or I've found, is possibly the hardest to ascertain is, can this person handle remote work and uncertainty, right? At an early stage company, a lot of the times, some of the things that you have to work on are not built yet. You might be a product person who has existed at Spotify where they have a very established structure and system for building product. So your work is spent on just doing product. At an early stage company, you not only have to do product, you also have to spend time building the method to build product. And so that's the most challenging one to figure out, and that's where I think like the referral reputation network becomes very important, because we can talk to people and say, when you work with this person, did they have to build the structure and the team and the process?
I love that. And this also very much resonates with our vision. I think that a resume, it's becoming increasingly obsolete, especially for companies on the cutting edge in tech, because
Yeah,
it's just a static view of everything someone's done versus showcasing what someone's capable of doing and if they are able to fit in, right? So we need to change talent infrastructure at its root
there's
to be
very little on
completely
a
different, right?
resume that's going to answer those second things that I highlighted, right? Like
Abs-
almost
abs-
nothing.
Absolutely. So
Yeah.
it's becoming more and more relevant. So I'm not saying that there's no room for a professional identity, but what I'm saying is it needs to become dynamic and it needs to showcase what someone's capable of doing, what they're passionate about, and more of their soft skills and things than just a static list of what they've done before, because that's going to it's good less and less useful for organizations on the cutting edge
Yeah.
in Web3 and many other emerging technology industries. And
Hmm. Hmm.
Bill, so we're actually nearing the end, and there's one question that we like to give people at the end, which are, what are some of the challenges and opportunities that you see in the current market conditions? And you can go wild with this one. It can be, anything that you can pick, any single vertical or thing within it.
Well, I think there's a number of things that come to mind. I'll try to do rapid fire here so that we can end on time. But I think one of the biggest challenges that that a lot of companies in the remote world deal with is, how do you create an environment where people can thrive when it's remote and distributed? Collaboration between humans is just inherently a very challenging thing. When you add more people and then put them at a further distance across time zone, it just makes it even more challenging. So that's, I think, the number one challenge is, how do you create an environment where people can thrive, do their best work, and really develop their craft in a remote world. And there's a huge opportunity there, right? There's an opportunity for companies and entrepreneurs to help with that. There's an opportunity for teams to spend their time trying to figure that out. I think the other opportunity is what we've been talking about here. It's very challenging to evaluate talent. It's like one of the hardest things that you have to do as a leader, as a manager, as a company, is, how do we figure out who's the right set of people to get on the bus? And so spending more time trying to figure out that proof of competency, proof of fit, and proof of like handling uncertainty is, I think, one of the like biggest kind of conundrums to try to sort out.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that. And that's very interesting. That's pertaining to talent, and I do agree. I think there's a lot of things that people are developing in terms of like onboarding techniques, cultural things where people leave a Slack channel open for the day so that different people in the company can collaborate.
Yeah.
And I like Web3s at the cutting edge of it because it's a recent, pretty new industry. So they've adopted all these kind of modern workforce models, and so I think a lot of exciting things are going to come out of it. And I
Yeah.
think will be the blueprint for a lot of traditional industries that will move to this, because there's also a geo like a geosocial like change or trends towards distributed work and more flexibility, right? So
I
we'll
mean,
have
you're
to adapt.
highlighting another challenge, which is, we may be moving into a world, particularly in the Web3 space, where people are less a part of one singular company and more a part of projects, where they're converging and diverging based on a new project, a new protocol, et cetera. And they might be working on a couple of things at once. And so where do we see this? Like, there's always an analogy from something that exists, right? Hollywood is an interesting model. When people come together for movie projects or film projects, right? They're not necessarily working for a company. They don't all work for the studio, right? They're independent actors, right? They converge for a particular set of time, might be 6 months, a year, 2 years, to do that project. And they come together, they develop the project, they launch it, and then that becomes part of their portfolio. So I see maybe a world in Web3 where we start heading towards people developing portfolios of the different projects that they worked in the roles that they had, and they take that with them.
That is such a cool analogy. I've never thought of it that way, but it makes a lot of sense. And yes, project-based work is the trend. Wow, that's a very cool comparison. And I guess then as a professional network, part of our challenge will be, how do we enable that type of talent acquisition and management that is more project-based versus what we have today with more permanent or different career models. And you'll still need people that are there in the company full time, just like you do in the studio, right? It's just that maybe you scale up and down, or you augment what you need and who you need based on project, new product gets launched, and then the people to maintain it afterward, right?
I think you nailed
So
it. You have a core that is maintaining whatever the core of the company, the protocol, the DAO is, but then it scales. It has to be fluid on the edges for when you're okay, we're going to launch a new feature, new product. Okay, we need to scale up the team for that initiative, and then we scale back down, and we scale up and down. Like it's hard because a lot of the structures that we have from like work laws, compensation, they have to change or evolve a little bit in the space to support it.
I think incentive models
Mhm.
and how, and this is why crypto is also fantastic, because you can get a different, you don't, it's not just equity, which is more rigid and has very long like horizon, so you can kind of, it's more fractionable and fast, and you can just earn it in your wallet, and then it can have smart contracts that dictate vesting, and
Mhm.
so it becomes much more interesting. And again, I think that's why Web3 will be at the cutting edge of all these new workforce models.
Yeah, I think it sets up well to introduce dynamics of fluidity with token economics, and just more flow-based structures where things are not as static and they're not as beholden to you having to stay necessarily for 10 years
Yeah.
at a company in order to realize value. There will certainly be some people who value that and want to do that, but then there's a space for other people who can be more flow based, and I think we're moving to a place where there's compensation structures that are being kind of set up to support that, or incentive structures. I think you said it well.
Absolutely. I think we're in the perfect playground for all these kind of new approaches to organization and talent to flourish. So
Yeah.
it's exciting. And
Well,
Bill, I
we
want to thank you for your time, and I want to thank all the audience, for your time today. I hope you enjoyed the conversation, and I encourage everyone to go check out Figment and their talent page. It's a fantastic company to work for, and someone we're going to be working with very closely as we launch our job portal. Bill, where can people find you? Where should people go find out more about Figment? And I know that you have a great educational platform that they should go check out as well.
Yeah, you can, I mean, you can find us all in the normal places on Twitter, LinkedIn. Go look at our job board. We're hiring for a couple of positions right now. So check that out at our website, figment.io. And yeah, I'm not on the socials all that much, but I more am a spectator than an active participant.
That sounds very peaceful. Well, thank you, Bill, so much. And
Nice to meet
again, thank you, everyone. Have a great week, abundance, and I'll be seeing you all from Consensus the rest of this week. Bye.